Hello, welcome to my HEX Staking channel on YouTube. I am your host CryptoFace. Today I want to share again a video from LBRY.tv. It is from a programmer who was involved in the development of HEX. He gives great inside view to look behind the scenes of the development of the HEX smart contract. After watching, you are able to understand the concept behind HEX much better. You can make your own educated financial decisions to know if HEX is the coin for you to make money with crypto. Okay, let's dive into it.
Okay, we're back for part 2 of HEX design history. And specifically I want to talk about the adoption amplifier. So this whole video is going to focus on that and kind of the process that brought that about. So when I learned about the project, it was originally just taking basically a projection of Bitcoin claims or proof of Bitcoin ownership and projecting that onto the HEX system. So you show up, you prove that you had some Bitcoin at the time of a snapshot, and you would get some HEX and you could stake that HEX. And you tell your friends, hey, if you had Bitcoin, you should totally claim some HEX because you can stake it and you do more things with it. It's on the Ethereum chain, so you get all these nice effects. And I think Richard's alluded to this. There is a bit of a bootstrapping problem there, that what gets people to care about it, and also how do you get people who only just heard about it on board? Because for every person you talk to and say, oh, did you have Bitcoin at this time? For example, I talked to my brother about the project and said, hey, do you still have any crypto, Bitcoin specifically? And he's, nah, I got rid of it. It was a fun game for him for a little while, but he dumped. There's no way to get that person on board, right? Because a priori, there's no exchanges, there's no way to get it other than a Bitcoin claim. So the idea for the adoption amplifier came mostly from that. This idea that you need an on-ramp where somebody can hear about the project and show up and get some. And there's some nice sort of secondary benefits to tying it to giving up some Ethereum for it. Kind of anchors the value of the HEX that you got for what you gave up in return. And again, this ability to on-ramp people who are only just hearing about the project and maybe had Bitcoin but don't anymore, or don't have any or never had any, but they regret missing out on the 2017 madness, and they could just want to get their piece. So a couple things to notice immediately. One, the marketing material on the Bitcoin claims already used a 50-week or 350-day launch phase. So the adoption amplifier should run the same amount of time. Additionally, you don't want some mechanism that predetermines what the ratio ought to be, because you still want early people to have some sort of advantage. Nothing, maybe nothing insurmountable, because if they get theirs and then the popularity of the project takes off, more people are going to want to split up the coins. Also, where are those coins going to come from? So that was a design challenge that was solved, I think, in a fairly elegant way. So EOS was clearly the model. The EOS launch, for those that don't know, used a very similar scheme where it was a long-running crowdfunding campaign, essentially, where they laid out a roadmap and they said, we're going to do almost a year worth of periods where we take in ETH and then give you this ERC20 token that when we launch our mainnet, if you've appropriately registered your keys, you can do some action to swap your ERC20 tokens, or rather just claim them on our new EOS main chain. So there were a few actions you had to take with the contract beyond just submitting Ethereum and getting EOS ERC20 tokens back. That was basically it. That was essentially the only thing worth taking, was 350 days, ETH in, token out. That was basically it. The main dev and I looked over the EOS contract. There's a bunch of garbage about the registration for your Ethereum public key to associate it to an EOS public key. There was some other junk in there, like kind of a fake limit order. Like you could set a limit for the amount of Ethereum for the day such that it would reject your transaction if there were already more Ethereum. So essentially protection for snipers. So if you think, oh, I'm going to get in and there's only 100 ETH in today, so I want to submit 5 ETH, but reject my transaction if there's more than 120 by the time my transaction's processed. So it only checks on input. It actually doesn't protect you if you get in, but then somebody snipes after you. It's basically useless. They had something else where you could schedule ahead of time, where you could put ETH in for an arbitrary day in the future. You could exit basically all days at once, but that was gas prohibitive. But apparently they never tested for that because it didn't really work in practice. I know a bunch of people who used it and they said, nah, you just need to do day by day because you exceed the gas limit. They didn't use a real function. They just used the fallback function where you just send ETH. So you could get locked out essentially if there was network congestion. All that stuff is gone. So all that stuff is gone. So the adoption amplifier just kept 350 days. It matched the claim sort of degeneration period. The coin problem, I think, was really elegantly solved, where it just takes a snapshot of the unclaimed Bitcoin for the day and it creates a copy of a tiny fraction of it to do the adoption amplifier. This creates kind of a nice tension where free claims can increase their own value relative to the paid path. So if you pay to get in, you're getting a copy of the unclaimed free coins. So if more of the free coins are claimed, that's fewer that are available for ETH, right? So if more free claims are made, free claims become more valuable relative to the paid path of using ETH. So that was kind of an interesting tension to create. It has sort of a nice symmetry that you start with the same Satoshi snapshot or snapshot of unclaimed Satoshis, and that sort of powers everything during the launch phase. What else is good about it? Oh, the referral program. So this was a fantastic suggestion from somebody in the community. Like, hey, you have this referral program for the Bitcoin claims. Just do it for the adoption amplifier. One, people love referral programs. And if the goal is to get people who just heard about it to participate, what better way to incentivize getting more people to hear about it than saying your referral link works for the adoption amplifier too? And sure enough, we have loads of stat sites that have popped up using exactly this incentive program. And that is probably the single best idea to come out of all the discussions around the adoption amplifier. The other stuff has kind of nice properties. Again, creating this sort of nice tension with free claims, having a sort of mirror image of the unclaimed Satoshis, sort of power or fuel the adoption amplifier. But the referral programs, hands down, was the best contribution from a community member that shall remain nameless, kind of at their behest. Let's see. So we started to nail down all the design stuff, kind of one thing at a time. So we'll do the referral thing. That's easy. But then there's all these complexities around that. So do you just lock in a single referrer? Maybe, but what if you want some flexibility, or you want to change referrers, or you find out that you can that your referral cookie was set by one site, but actually you don't like that guy, you don't want to reward them, you're getting better info from another site, you want to reward that person. How do you swap out? So the main dev implemented this kind of cool queuing feature where you can enter multiple times per day, and it will actually record the referrals independently of one another. So you can resolve them and make sure that you just resolve some. If it's for tax purposes, you can resolve all, and all the referrers get rewarded. So that was a cool feature and forward-looking to things that people might want to do. Now, we'll talk about this more in the next episode, when I talk about the audit process, because this is a little bit funny how much thought went into some of these things that's never going to be exercised. The fact that the code is locked makes you think about all the contingencies and all the possibilities, and you just scrutinize every little detail of certain design choices, certain implementation choices, and then none of it matters. Nobody looks at it or cares. They just sort of, they either trust or they take the word of an auditor, like, oh yeah, seems fine, don't worry about this. So we'll talk about that more next. So we have the design principles in place. The implementation includes this ability to have multiple referrers or split your referral, essentially. So if you want to put in 2 ETH on a day, you can just do it in 2 1 ETH chunks and reward 2 different referrers. If you feel like you maybe got onboarded by one, but you're getting really good content from the other and you want to sort of reward both. The flexibility of exiting the lobby kind of at your choosing, and also exiting partially if you want for whatever reason. That was also I think a good implementation detail that probably nobody has used. Let me think. What else would be worth mentioning here? Oh, so the day one thing, this was kind of a funny last minute realization that claimers, if you start the launch phase on the same day for everybody, Bitcoin claimers actually had a 1-day advantage on staking over adoption amplifier people. And the reason is because your claim immediately gives you HEX and then stakes you for 90% of your claim. Whereas the adoption amplifier, if you enter on that day, you can only exit the next day and then stake, and then that stake becomes active the day after that. So if you start day one with the adoption amplifier, the Bitcoin claimers, their shares are active day 2 and your shares are active day 3. So it becomes a bit unfair for first day Bitcoin claimers in that they have an advantage that you could not have had if you just did adoption amplifier. So all of this thought and spreadsheeting kind of went into how to start the adoption amplifier a day early, and you can't take a snapshot of the unclaimed Satoshis because there haven't been any claims yet. So you don't open up that part of the code until the following day. So while you could fake it and have like one kind of fake day of unclaimed Satoshis where it's just all of them, that's also kind of not entirely fair in a way, because there was no way for free claimers to impact that. So as it turns out, I think Richard just made the call to just double the projected unclaimed Satoshi count at 1 billion and just make that day 1. And then after day 1, you take these snapshots of unclaimed Satoshis. So it was kind of an interesting, I think we double checked the spreadsheet 500 times because the contract is 0 indexed, meaning that day 1 is referred to as day 0 in contract terms. But in all of the verbiage on the UI and in what people sort of expect, you start counting at 1. You don't start counting at 0. It's just computers start counting at 0 a lot. Programming languages, that's very common. So there was all of this confusion about, whoa, what are we talking about? We're talking about day 0, we're talking about day 1, we're talking about day -1. How does this work? So getting some clarity to the community was kind of funny. Keeping it straight in our own heads when we're talking about, first day versus first claim day. Versus first stake active day, because there's some edge cases there as well. That was all kind of, it's sort of silly. It was like a comedy of errors more than anything. Like the intent was clear, but just communicating it was very difficult. So that was sort of a funny kind of last minute pivot, like, oh, right, we have to account for this and make sure that everybody kind of gets to the starting line at the same time. Let me think, what other, I think that basically covers it. It's sort of this interesting, start with a premise that already existed in the project. There's a very good system that sort of modeled that, the sort of periodic dispensations or dispensing of coins. As it turns out, the implementation was totally useless to us. So we had to make a bunch of different choices. There were some very good design improvements suggested kind of throughout the process that got adopted. And then kind of at the last minute, there was this realization of making sure that everybody started on equal footing. And then communicating all this to people was very touchy. A lot of documents got written, a lot of spreadsheets got made, and the other end, so the end day, so the last claimable day and then the last lobby day matters quite a bit, because then you have to figure out big payday. So there was that gyration kind of at the other end. So how do we get everyone to start at the same time? How do we get everyone to end at the same time and have stakes? So the last lobby has to exit, which is the day after the last day. And then once they exit, they have to stake, and then their shares become active the day after that. So Richard has this kind of funny spreadsheet screenshot that was circulating for months that was that had cells for the first like 4 days to say, okay, AA starts here, Bitcoin's claims start here, first stake starts here, ... day 350, day 351, 52, 53, big payday. Yeah, so that was a funny process, because it started as something really simple in conception, and then the devil was in the details, kind of at every stage. On the bright side, because of that, there was time to add cool features like referrals, like the ability to stack referrals if you wanted, actually, frankly, having the day before, that was a good feature. That was sort of a good catch at the end. And some of these things only happen because you have enough time to really think about them and really think about all the possibilities and contingencies. So that's basically it. That's the history of how we got kind of the adoption amplifier we have. And next time, I want to talk a little bit about the audit process and about a bunch of little features or points in the contract that aren't scrutinized by the public, but were heavily scrutinized, and kind of that mismatch, and how funny that was to sort of go through. All right, no promises on when that'll be, because obviously this has taken forever to put out. So sorry about that. If you have any questions, specifically comments, they're all welcome. Either leave a comment on the video or shoot me an email at tryhex.win@gmail.com.
Do you feel generous today? Remember, you will get 10% more HEX, should you wish to click my referral link before you claim with Bitcoins or transform Ethereum into HEX. Do you want to earn crypto for watching content, or to publish decentralized on the blockchain? Check out LBRY.tv. My invitation link is in the description below. Okay, that's it for me today. Thank you for watching and happy staking.